What's up, chess fans? Welcome back. This is the recap series of my games from the Westchester County Championship. This is round 5 of 6. In this game, I'm playing with the white pieces, and my opponent has a very similar rating to myself. Both of us started the tournament with ratings just under 2,000, 1990 approximately. However, we're both 4 out of 4, so both of our ratings should go above expert level by the end of the tournament. Okay, so let's get started. I played my favorite move, e4. And in this position, by far the most popular move is knight f3. I like to play bishop c4 just as a surprise weapon. I played knight f6 and d4. Now this is what's called either the bishop's gambit or the Urasov gambit. He did take the pawn, and I played knight f3. Now from here, black has a number of options. He can accept the e-pawn, which leads to a lot of theoretical lines that I'm familiar with. He can move his queen knight out, which transposes the two knights defense. He has a number of other options. He can play d5, bishop b4. In this case, he chose to transpose the two knights, which I'm also happy with. I castled, and now by far the most popular response is knight takes e4. And this has many well-known lines I tend to be familiar with, but he played bishop c5, which I am not so familiar with. Now this is a start of the Max Lang attack. Max Lange was a German grandmaster in the 1800s. Of course, in English we often say Max Lang, but this leads to a very tactical, very theoretical line. And of course, I was extremely worried. I only knew a few more moves of this opening, and I was afraid my opponent maybe had outprepared me and knew 20, 25 moves of theory. So anyway, I knew to play e5, d5. We took each other's pieces, rook e1, bishop e6, and knight g5. This is all book. The most natural move would be queen f6, which wins a pawn and protects the e6 square. However, this would be a mistake. So if you haven't seen this position before, pause the video and try to figure out what white should do. So white has a response here. He can take the bishop and play queen h5, which forks the king and bishop. So he didn't do that. He played the correct move, which is queen d5. I played knight c3, taking advantage of the pin of the bishop. Of course, he cannot capture my knight because I can take his queen and his bishop is pinned. So he didn't do that. He played the correct move, queen f5. Now here I got a bit confused. I had remembered that knight ce4 was a move and g4 was a move, but I couldn't remember which order to play them. I played g4, which is the incorrect move. But here he started to think, and I was actually very happy to see that, because this meant, of course, that his preparation had ended at about the same time that mine had. So after a few minutes of thinking, he played queen g6, which makes sense, and knight ce4, and bishop e6. And now here I had my first long think of the game. One move I gave some thought was h4, with the goal of trying to trap his queen with h5. But I think here he can just simply recapture my pawn, and I don't have a whole lot for this position. Let's go back. I also considered playing f4 with the goal of playing f5 to fork his queen and bishop. This looked extremely dangerous to me. I'm essentially opening up a discovered attack on the king. And I didn't go for that. Eventually I decided to take his bishop, and then I had trouble deciding if I wanted to move my knight or my bishop to the g5 square. If I move my knight to the g5 square, I think he can just castle queenside, and I don't get a whole lot for this position. The engine gives black a plus here. So after some thought, I decided to bring my bishop to the g5 square, with the notion that this is now preventing him from queenside castling, which is a very common response to this opening. So after a very long think here, he played rook f8, which surprised me. I think a castling short should be the right response. So let's go on. So first I took the G pawn, and then I played Queen E2, which is the engine move. This does a couple things. First of all, I'm now attacking the C4 pawn, as well as I'm opening up all kinds of discovered attacks on the king. So for example, knight d6, followed by queen takes e6. Now black, the engine has a couple of interesting recommendations here for black. One thing it recommends is just rook d8, voluntarily giving up the exchange, with the notion that now it's moving the king off of the e file, and he's now threatening to put his knight into e5 and in one of these squares. What I actually expected was for him to play queen g6, just adding some defense to the e6 square. He ended up playing d3, which opens up a double attack. It's first of all, it's attacking the queen, and it's also lining up the bishop and the rook on my f2 square. I'd already seen this ahead of time, so I think I gave it away already. But if you want to, you can pause the video and see what white should play. So I played the best move, knight d6, which the engine does give a double exclam, which I don't really agree with. I think it's somewhat of an obvious move. The only logical response is to take the knight, and then I can take the e6 pawn with check. I use only one response, knight e7, and now I had another long think. Certainly I can trade everything off, queen e7, which will force black into a position where I can give a discovered check. But I honestly didn't see a huge amount of advantage here. On top of that, I really have to worry about his rapidly advancing pawns. It turns out that this is actually strong for white. I can simply take the h pawn. He cannot return to the e file because of rook e1 check. And if he goes back to the c file, I can simply take this. Rook c1 check. And very strong move here, bishop e7 with double attack on the rook and the pawn. So anyway, I didn't see so far ahead, and I ended up deciding to take the knight with the bishop. And I honestly thought this was crushing. His king is stuck in the middle, and I'm threatening all kinds of discovered attacks with the bishop. For example, if he takes my f2 pawn with his rook, I will have a checkmate coming. And if he takes it with the bishop and tries to win the exchange this way, I can checkmate him this way. So it appeared to be crushing for me, but it turned out that he had a lot of defensive resources that made it very difficult for me. He played the best move here, which is queen f7. I played the only move that makes sense. Bishop takes f8. I was hoping that he would trade queens at this point, because this would leave his king stuck on the back rank, somewhat limiting the scope of his queen rook, but he didn't do that. He played correctly. He played king f8, and given the fact that he's still threatening f2, I have to trade queens, and traded pawns. Now, when I saw this position from afar, about 5 moves back, I'd seen that the most natural-looking move, rook a to d1, runs into bishop a5. And while I worry about moving my rook to get it out of the way of the attack, he then has a d2, which, and I was really afraid this pawn could become quite strong. And while I worry about trying to win it, he has ideas of moving his rook, maneuvering his rook to the c1 square. In this position, I ended up playing rook e to d1, sidestepping this whole idea about attacking my rook. But if I'd taken a few minutes just to reevaluate the position, I would have seen that this is in fact still the correct move, and that after a move like bishop a5, I can just play rook e4. So this activates the rook, provides defense to the g-pawn, but most importantly, I can just simply kick out his bishop with the move like b4. So it's important to reevaluate the position after it appears on the board, and not how you see it several moves back. This turned out to be a mistake, rook e d1, because he has a great resource at this point. Rook g8. And the problem that I'm seeing is that I have no real way to defend the pawn. My f pawn is pinned, and if I try to defend with my h pawn, he just simply plays h5. And this is not the sort of position where you want to be trading pawns. You actually want to be trading your pieces when you're heading exchange. So I have to let him take the pawn. Rook d3, rook f4, and rook f6. Now here I played a very natural looking move to activate my queen rook. Rook e1, which he countered with rook g6. And now I realized I'm actually losing. I'm losing another pawn. Let me just make a random move here. But he's actually threatening rook g1 followed by rook g2, and one of these pawns will have to fall. So I don't really have an easy way to defend the second rank. I cannot defend it with rook d2 because then he's able to skewer me, and I cannot defend it with rook e2 because then this is checkmate. So I'm simply going to have to lose a pawn. I decided just to maneuver my king out the way, and rook e2 at this point. So now he actually has an extra pawn for the exchange, and things are becoming more even. In fact, the engine does not even give me a full point advantage. It gives me around 0.8. But at least now my rooks are somewhat coordinated. They're in the center, and my plan at this point was simply to start walking my king up the board. You should move your king up in the ending and start harassing his d-pawns and his queenside pawns. So he moved back to defend his pawn, king c2. The reason I played a3 here is because I thought at some point he would play bishop c5, which is the most natural looking square for his bishop to defend the d-pawn, and I might be able to kick it out with b4. That's eventually what happened. So I think from his perspective, his best strategy, honestly, is just to hunker down and move his bishop back and forth and king back and forth and wait for me to come get him. It's honestly not that easy for me to make progress. He played h5, which actually gives me a target. Rook h2, king g6, and rook d5. The point being that if he tries to trade my f-pawn for his h-pawn, for example here, I'm not going to take the h-pawn, I'm going to take the d-pawn. And he's somewhat stuck in the sense that if he moves his king back, that will undefend his h-pawn. And if he moves his king forward, I will simply play rook d5, skewering the king and pawn. So let's go back. He didn't do that. He played a bishop c5, which I expected, b4, and he went back. And now I play rook h3, defending my f-pawn, and now there's really no way for him to stop me taking the h-pawn. Now here, I think his wheels started to fall off a bit, and he just started making some desperate moves. I can actually win several ways here. I can take either pawn. I chose rook b5. Now I took the pawn, and I took his b-pawn. I'll go through these moves pretty quickly. So this this forks the bishop and the d-pawn. He's no real easy way to save that. And eventually at this point, I was able to win his h-pawn. Now, we did actually play on for around 10 more moves at this point. Both of us had fallen below 5 minutes, so we stopped scorekeeping. But I was able to eventually coordinate my rooks, especially on the b file, and run my a-pawn down to make a queen, after which time he resigned. So what are some thoughts on this game? So first of all, I am happy with my overall play. I played a 90. So based on my strength, approximately expert, I should be happy with anything over 90. He also played quite well, other than rook f8 blunder towards the beginning of the game. He actually had some great defensive resources. I also thought my time management was good. Again, I made sure that I had plenty of time to play the ending. My opponent used up a significant amount of his time in the opening and early middle game, such that he didn't leave himself much time in the ending, and he made several inaccuracies as a result. The 6th round is coming up, which will be the final round of the tournament. For the first time, I will be playing a master. He's not a title player, but he is over 2,200, and he's known for being very unpredictable, playing all sorts of openings. So I will need to be have my best game ready in order to stand good chances against him. So I'm going to end the video here. I hope you're enjoying the recaps, and we will see you all in the next video.